Now let's try this exam question. We have question 3. In the diagram, C is a point on the y-axis such that A, B, C, and D are vertices of parallelogram ABCD. K is the point 0 and -2 1/4, and L is a point on AB such that KL is parallel to CB. For 1.1, we have calculate the length of diagonal DB. So what do we use to calculate the length? We use the distance formula. We have 3.1, let's label our points. Point D as -4 and 2, and point B, you can use it as a second point. We have 4 and -4. So this is X and that is Y. That is your X and that is your Y. This is X1, Y1, X2, and Y2. So we can write our distance formula, which is, you open a square root, we have x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now let's substitute. We have x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is -4. Then we should have a square bracket. You have squared plus y2, which is -4, minus y1, which is 2. Squared. Now let's close our square root. When you punch this in your calculator, avoid making any mistakes. Your answer should be 10. Therefore, dB is equal to 10. We've answered 3.1. Let's move to 3.2. Calculate the coordinates of the midpoint DB. Let's start with D. D is -4 and 2. We have B as 4 and -4. So this is point 1 and that is point 2. -4 is your X, 2 is your Y, 4 is your X, -4 is your Y. So that is X1, Y1, X2, Y2. Now let's substitute into our midpoint formula, which is M X1 plus X2 over 2 and Y1 plus Y2 over 2. Now let's substitute. Let's find the midpoint of DB. X1, which is -4, plus X2, which is 4 over 2. We also have Y1, which is 2, plus Y2, which is -4, all over 2. So when you calculate this, when you punch this in your calculator, your answer should be 0. And when you calculate this, when you punch it in your calculator, your answer should be -1. So the midpoint of DB is 0 and -1. The coordinates, I mean. Let's move to 3.3. We have calculate the gradient of AD. Let's label our points. For A, we have 0 and 4. For D, we have -4 and 2. That 0 is your X, that 4 is your Y, that -4 is your X, and that 2 is your Y. That is X1, Y1, X2, Y2. What is your gradient formula again? You have a small m is equal to Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Now let's substitute. You have m is equal to Y2, which is 2, minus Y1, which is 4, over X2, which is -4, minus X1, which is 0. Now when you punch this in your calculator, you should get 1 over 2 as the gradient of AD. Let's move to 3.4. Prove that AD is perpendicular to AB. What do you guys remember about gradient lines? when you multiply, perpendicular lines, when you multiply their gradients, you should always get a -1. And they always meet at 90 degrees. They cut each other directly at 90 degrees. So how can we prove this? AD, do you have the gradient of AD? AD, yes, the gradient is 1/2. Do you have the gradient of AB? No. We can try to calculate it by using the points. Let's label our points. We have A, which is 0 and 4, and we have B, which is 4 and -4. That is X, that is your Y, that is your X, and that is your Y. This is X1, Y1, X2, Y2. Now let's use our gradient formula. This will be the gradient of AB is equal to Y2, which is -4, minus Y1, which is 4, over X2, which is 4, minus X1, which is 0. Now when you punch this in a calculator, your answer should be gradient of AB is -2. Okay, so we have the gradient of AD times the gradient of AB. They should be equal to -1. What is the gradient of AD? It's 1/2 times the gradient of AB, which is -2. 1/2 times -2 is, we can put this in a bracket, it's -1. Therefore, AD is parallel to AB. You've proven this by multiplying the gradients. This is similar to the question that we did in the gradients video, in the the perpendicular lines video, I'm sorry. This paper is more approachable compared to the first one that I did. You guys should definitely know from 3.1 until 3.4. You should get those 3 marks, okay? Now let's move to 3.5. Give a reason why parallelogram ABCD is a rectangle. This is worth 1 mark, and I told you guys that you should drop us an email or text us on WhatsApp so that I can send you a PDF that has different properties of rectangles or parallelograms in the previous lesson. So I'll just write a short answer, 3.5. So a parallelogram is a rectangle if at least one of its interior angles is equal to 90 degrees. Okay, and since in the previous example we proved that AD is parallel to AB, then angle A, we show this by writing our A, then some sort of a cap is equal to 90 degrees. Okay, then we can say a parallelogram with a right angle is a rectangle. So I wrote my statement and I also gave a reason. Now let's move to 3.6. Let's move to 3.6. Determine the equation of KL in the form y is equal to mx plus c. Remember, this is your straight line formula, mx plus c. You have to find your gradient. And to find the gradient, we can look at parallel lines as they have the same gradient. So KL, we only have point K, we do not have point L. So we can't really use the gradient formula as there's a point that's missing. Now let's look at CD. They say that CB is parallel to KL. That means they have the same gradient. However, we don't have the gradient of BC. So since ABCD is a rectangle, we've proven this in the previous question. The opposite side, AD, meaning from here to there, is parallel to BC. For rectangles, opposite sides are equal in length and parallel. And what do you guys know about parallel lines? They have the same gradient. So do we have the gradient of AD? Yes, it's 1/2. We calculated that in the previous question. So that means the gradient of CB is equal to the gradient of AD, which is 1/2. And to give a reason, we may say opposite and parallel sides of a rectangle. So we can see AD is parallel to BC. So we can substitute our gradient. This will be y is equal to m, your gradient is 1 over 2. We have x plus c. Now which point can we substitute? Remember they say the equation of KL. KL, so we can substitute this point K. What are the coordinates of K? The coordinates of K are 0 and -2, 1 over 4. It's a mixed fraction. And you guys know that that is your x and that is your y. Now let's substitute. Your y will be -2, 1 over 4, as your y is equal to 1 over 2. Your x is 0 plus c. So this is -2, 1 over 4 is equal to 4 over 2 times 0 is 0. You're left with plus c. -2 over 4 is a mixed fraction. It can be written as -9 over 4. Use a calculator to verify by punching this in and punching SD is equal to 0 plus c is c. Therefore, c is equal to -9 over 4. Now let's write our formula. We have y is equal to 1 over 2x minus this part, which is your c, 9 over 4. So you've answered 3.6. Now let's move to the last question. Write down with reasons the coordinates of C. So in a rectangle or in a parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. That means the midpoint of AC is the same exact point as the midpoint of DB. So what is the midpoint of AC? We don't know it, but what is the midpoint of DB? The midpoint of DB is point M, which is 0 and -1. Remember, we calculated this in 3.2. So since the coordinates of C are unknown, let's write this as C, X, and Y. So in AC, we already know that A is 0 and 4. Now let's use the midpoint formula for AC. Now let's write our midpoint formula. It's x1 plus x2 over 2, and we have y1 plus y2 over 2. Now remember, we also have point 0 and -1, which is m, the one that we found in the previous examples. So this is basically 0 and -1 is equal to, we have x plus 1, we have x1 plus x2 over 2. Now let's substitute the unknown. This will be x1, which is 0, plus x2, which is x, over 2. We then have y1, which is 4, plus, remember to label your points, y2, which is y. These are the unknown points. Now let's split them into two separate equations. We'll have, that is your x, and that is your y. That is your x, and that is your y. So let's say this 0, your x is equal to 0 plus x over 2. So it's basically this is equal to that. Okay, now let's solve. We want to get rid of this fraction, and to do so we can multiply both sides by 2. If you don't know how to solve linear equations, you can check out the video that is featured on this channel. The link will be in the description. So we can multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that fraction. This cancels with that. You're left with 2 times 0, which is 0, is equal to 0 plus x. You take this 0 that side, you'll basically have x is equal to 0. So for your first coordinate, you already have 0. Now let's solve for y. We'll have negative 1 is equal to 4 plus y over 2. Now let me show you guys that negative 1 is equal to 4 plus y over 2. Okay, now let's solve. How do we solve? You can multiply both sides by 2. This cancels with that. 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2, is equal to, we're left with 4 plus y. Take this 4 that side, and you have negative 2 minus 4 is equal to y. Now let's solve this. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6 is equal to y. So basically y is equal to negative 6. So our coordinates will be 0 and negative 6 as the coordinates of C. And that is how we solve this. I hope that you guys understood. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments, and drop us an email if you want more past question papers so that you're fully prepared for your June prep and your final exams. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.